Pranam to all of you. 19th January 2021, this year, the birthday of Swami Saradananda ji, or the Janma Tithi. So I have thought to read this great life of Swami Saradananda, who was the direct disciple of Sri Ramakrishna. I will read his small life and teachings. Swami Saradananda Sharatchandra Chakraborty first came to Dakshineshwar in October 1883. When he was 18 years old, Sharat's father owned a pharmacy and therefore wanted his son to become a doctor. Sarada was willing to do this, especially when Noren approved the plan and he entered the Calcutta Medical College. But when Ramakrishna became fatally ill, Sharat at once abandoned his medical studies in order to nurse his master. He never returned to them, for he became a monk. Throughout the rest of his life, however, he showed a vocation for nursing the sick. This he did fearlessly, even in case of the most infectious diseases. Sharat was noted for his courage and his imperturbable calm, the calm of the true yogi, which he displayed in the midst of various dangers. On one occasion, when he was travelling by carriage in the mountains of Kashmir, the horse took fright and bolted down a steep slope. It was only saved from disaster because the carriage was stopped by a tree. Saradananda got out just a moment before. The horse was killed by a great rock which fell from above. When he was asked later how had felt at the time of the accident, he said that his mind had remained detached throughout, observing what took place with the objective interest. On another occasion, Saradananda was coming up the Ganges by boat with one of the devotees when a violent wind storm arose. The boat seemed likely to sink, but the Swami never stopped puffing away at his hookah. His aplomb irritated the nervous devotee so much that he finally seized the pipe and threw it into the water. In 1893, Vivekananda went for the first time to the United States and spent more than 3 years there and in Europe lecturing. In 1896, he wrote asking Swami Saradananda to come to the West and carry on his work. The two met in London, where Saradananda had been giving some lectures. Vivekananda left for India and Saradananda sailed for New York, where he remained as the head of the Vedanta Society until his return in India in 1898. He later became the first secretary of the Ramakrishna Mutt and Mission and held this office until his death in 1927. Among Saradananda's many duties was the direction of a magazine called the Udbodhan, Awakening, which has been founded by Vivekananda. In 1908, he decided to build a house which would serve as an office for the magazine and a home for the Holy Mother. It was to pay off the debts incurring in building of this house that Saradananda began to write his articles, which formed his Ramakrishna, the great master, called in Bengali Sri Ramakrishna Lila Prasango. It was typical of him that he demanded no special privacy for himself while he engaged in this enormous task. Sitting cross-legged at a low desk in a tiny room with the chatter of visitors all around him, he worked away with perfect concentration, breaking off whenever necessary to attend some administrative detail. Saradananda continued his work on the Ramakrishna biography until the death of Holy Mother in 1920. After that, he seemed to lose all desires to finish it, and this is why an account of the last days of the Ramakrishna is missing from the book. Instead, Swami busied himself in the arrangements for the building of a temple to the Holy Mother at her native village of Jairambati. It was consecrated in 1923. While in ecstasy, Sri Ramakrishna's behavior would often be mysterious. One day in such a mood, he sat on the lap of a young man, Sharadchandra by name, and remarked, "I was telling how much weight he could bear." This Sharadchandra, who was later known as Swami Saradananda, successfully bore the burden of running Sri Ramakrishna Mutt and Mission as its General Secretary for nearly 3 decades. Sharadchandra Chakraborty, birth 23rd December 1865, was born at Calcutta in a rich and orthodox Brahmin family. He and Shoshi, who later became Swami Ramakrishnananda, were not only cousins and family friends, but also studied together at the Metropolitan College of Calcutta. The first contact of the two cousins with Sri Ramakrishna during October 1883 was a turning point in their lives. Friendship with Narendranath Swami Vivekananda gave a further fill-up to their spiritual and monastic aspirations. Sharad, who was an adept in serving the sick, both by temperament and by experience, was one of the few important disciples of Sri Ramakrishna who nursed him during his fatal illness. After his passing away, Sharad too joined the select band of monastics under the leadership of Narendra and became Swami Saradananda. Like his other monastic brothers, Swami Saradananda also spent a few years as an itinerant monk practicing severe austerities. However, when Swami Vivekananda called him for continuing his work in the West, Saradananda went to London first and later to New York for the same. While he was proving to be a great success in the West, especially due to his spiritual attainments, he was recalled to India in 1898 by Swami Vivekananda to take over to the executive responsibility of the Sri Ramakrishna Mutt and Mission as its General Secretary, in which capacity he served till his last day. The way he served Sri Sarada Devi, the Holy Mother, was a model par excellence for anyone to emulate. In order to build a residence for her at Calcutta, which would also house the office of the Udbodhan, the Bengali monthly of the Ramakrishna Order, he labored hard. To repay the debts he had incurred in doing so, he wrote the now monumental work Sri Ramakrishna Leela Prasanga, Sri Ramakrishna the Great Master. The Swami was as learned as he was spiritual. His courtesy and gentleness were so overwhelming that even the rudest of men would melt into the submission. Equanimity and cool-headedness, even under very trying circumstances, were another remarkable characteristics of his. Soon after successfully convening the Ramakrishna Mission Convention at Belur Math in 1926, he took ill and shuffled off the mortal coil on the 19th August 1927. Through selfless work, the mind gets purified, says Swami Saradananda. And when the mind becomes pure, there arise knowledge and devotion in it. Whatever work stands in the way of God realization and increases discontent is bad work. You should wholly discard it. The Ramakrishna Mission does not like to express any opinion, good or bad, about political discussions, for the Master did not instruct us to do anything of the kind, and Swamiji asked the mission to keep itself aloof from such effort. That is why the Ramakrishna Mission has been all along engaging itself in spirituality and service to humanity. That were the words of Swami Saradananda. He also says, nowadays there are so many religious societies, but people lose all interest in them after a few days. What is the reason for this? The reason is our words are not in accord with our thoughts. The first step in religion is to be sincere to the core. That were few of the teachings of Swami Saradananda. In very short, we have seen the great life of Swami Saradananda and few of the teachings of Swami Saradananda. As we are marking the birthday of Swami Saradananda, we pray to Sri Ramakrishna Deva, may we follow his teachings in our everyday life. May we go more near to God. Thank you. Jai Swamiji. Jai Ma. আমাদের ইউটিউব চ্যানেলটি সাবস্ক্রাইব করুন আরও ভিডিওস পেতে।